Well, good morning and welcome to Over the Vast Nurseries. It's a lovely morning in early autumn, and as you see here in the nursery, we've got lots of really lovely plants, ones that have been especially selected for their performance in this region. That's the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states of the US. Lots and lots of really nice things that are available through a network of garden centres that are located right throughout our region. And amongst them, of course, are some wonderful flowering shrubs. And if you're looking for a really beautiful flowering shrub, you probably ought to check out some of the lovely varieties of butterfly bushes, or buddleias as they're known botanically. Lots of different colours, and also ones that grow with different habits, from quite tall ones to medium-sized growing ones, and then some lovely shorter, more compact growing varieties. And if you're looking for a really exciting, fantastic variety of a short, compact growing variety, take a look at this little beauty here. This is Buddleia Chrysalis Blue. Now, I probably don't need to tell you that butterfly bushes are magnificent garden plants. They're hardy to grow, sweetly scented. I can smell the fragrance as I'm talking now. They bring in butterflies and pollinating insects, and once they get established, they're remarkably drought tolerant, and very important in this region, in this area, they're not normally bothered by deer. And when you have a little beauty like this that's absolutely covered with all of these gorgeous light violet blue flowers, putting on a terrific show, giving off a lovely fragrance, and just beaming out colour in the morning sunlight, I think you can see what a terrific plant this would be, whether you used it just as a single specimen at the front of a bed or a border, perhaps planted out along foundation plantings. If you have banks or hillsides or rock gardens, they'll look lovely there on the sloping ground. And of course, if you have the space and you're able to plant them in mass like this, they will be really effective. And what's more, these flowers last very well as a cut flower too. And this produces nice strong stems that are stocky and bushy. And so you could see that this would make a lovely little item for clipping and putting in a vase of water for you to be able to enjoy inside your home as well as outdoors. An absolutely beautiful variety that began life way back in 2015. Dr. Scott Trees is a lifelong plant breeder, 40 years in the industry, an award-winning plant breeder that has worked on things like roses, on poinsettias, perennials, and of course butterfly bushes. And this is one that we got to trial about 4 or 5 years ago. And as soon as we put it into our trials, we could see immediately that this was a plant with tremendous potential. We just love the short, stocky habit and the way that it is so free-flowering and putting on such a terrific show. We knew this was a special plant, and then when we started to grow more of it and continue with our trials, it just seemed to look better and better. And now, as you see, it's going to be absolutely sparkling, gleaming off loads of colour whenever you go along and see it in one of our garden centres. Now, I think when I reflect on it, I misspoke a little bit when I said that they are hardy to grow. What I meant to say is that they are easy to grow. And in a way, I suppose I was right when I said that they're hardy to grow too, because these are nice hardy plants. The easy to grow part is important to stress, because that's the incredible thing about buddleias, in that all they want is a nice sunny location in an average garden soil. The one thing to avoid is a soaking wet place. So avoid wet conditions and you'll find that these will do very well in just an average garden soil. When you get it home, dig a good sized hole, Put in some organic matter, mix that up in the bottom of the hole and water them too until they become established. If you want to find out how to do that, there is a video here on this channel that will tell you how to plant a shrub. Just follow those directions and you'll be able to get it in if you haven't planted a plant before. Now, the thing about these is that once they get established, they're incredibly easy to grow and very drought tolerant too. In fact, when they get going in the middle of the summer, they'll really not need any extra watering once they become established. The only thing really that I would suggest you do is in the springtime is go in after the worst of the winter has passed and prune them. You see, Buddleias grow out and flower on the current year's wood, and all of these shoots that are on this plant now that are all carrying all these flowers were made this year. And here in the nursery, we go through on a frequent basis and we prune back the plants to make them extra bushy and compact and well shaped. We call this cycle pruning, and if you look through here, you'll see that the alternate rows are ones that were pruned a couple of weeks ago so that we're able to keep a nice succession of flowering going on through the season, so that when you visit the garden centres, you'll be able to see plants like this that are in flower. But in your garden, you can do this in early spring. Just go through and trim them fairly hard back. There's another video here on this channel that will tell you how to prune a Buddleia. You can do that, and then you'll be able to have all of this nice, strong, luxuriant growth, and of course, lots of flowers. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that these are hardy throughout our entire region. In fact, this one is rated as being hardy to zone 5. So therefore, right throughout our entire region, you'll find that these will grow and prosper. In really cold parts of zone 5, you might find that they are what they call and describe as dieback shrubs. In other words, that after a particularly cold winter, some of the stems may die back to the crown. In which case, in springtime, when you're pruning it, you're going to remove those dead shoots, and then of course it will sprout and come again from the crown. If you're worried about it and want to employ a little technique that will help it get through the colder parts of the region, then what I'd suggest you do in late autumn, early winter, is add some extra mulch around the crown of the plant. That's a little extra insulation that will help to keep the crown of the plant protected from really cold temperatures, and then in springtime you can just rake that back, and guess what? The plant will then grow out. In the rest of our region, you'll find that these stems will stay alive, and then you simply prune them back in springtime. So, as well as being hardy and easy to grow, the other great thing about Buddleias is that they flower for a really long time. When you prune them back in springtime, you're going to find the young growth will of course grow out, and then very quickly, probably sometime around early summer, they're going to start forming these little flower buds, and that will be the start of the flowers that will keep going literally all through the rest of the summer and into the autumn until the frosts of the autumn, and that's when then obviously they're starting to prepare for winter dormancy. Now, like you've seen in our pruning technique here on the nursery, we go through and they respond very well to pruning. So a hard prune in springtime will certainly be all that you need to do. But there's another little trick that I wanted to show you. And as you see on this plant here, there are lots of flower buds coming from inside the plant. There are some flowers now that are in their peak, but there's also some that are almost finished, like this one here, and then this one here that's completely finished. And that's when, if you go in with a pair of pruners, you can snip out these old flower heads. That will help to tidy up the plant and freshen it up and make it more attractive. But also, of course, what you're doing is that you're encouraging these young flower shoots to grow out and then come and take their turn at flowering. So if you've got a pair of snips at home, or even a pair of scissors, you can go in fairly frequently and just snip off the flowers like I'm doing here, and that, as you see, will go a long way to freshening up the plant and keeping it really beautiful. And the modification of that is that if you get to the stage like this one, where there's predominantly brown old spent seed heads on here and not a whole lot of young growth and young flower buds coming, then kind of like we were doing with our mechanical pruning, but in your case you could use a set of hedging shears like these, and then you can just go in and trim back the plant a couple of times during the growing season by just clipping off the old flower heads like I'm doing here now, clipping it into a rounded mound, and that will do two things. First of all, of course, it will keep the plant extra bushy and compact and rounded shape. But also what it's going to do is to stimulate young growth that's going to come from the rounded mound and then produce lots of flower buds like this one. And this is a useful technique to know about for another reason as well, and that is that with some of the older varieties of Buddleias, there's a tendency for some of them in some parts of the country to seed into the landscape. Obviously, if you go through and trim off the old flower heads, you're removing that source of seed. You're also, of course, like I mentioned, encouraging the plant to be shorter and bushier and flower for a long time. Now, the neat thing about this variety, and also quite a few of the other varieties that we grow here on the nursery and offer through the garden centres, and that is that these are varieties that have been deliberately bred to have very low seed counts, and in fact some of them we believe are sterile. They call them interspecific hybrids. That means that somewhere in their breeding background there are several species that breeds in incompatibility in seed set, and therefore you can plant them out in the garden and not have to worry about them seeding into the landscape. When all's said and done, as I think you can see, this is an absolutely beautiful, compact little beauty that will only get to about 2.5 to 3 foot high at the most, will naturally make these compact mounds that are covered with lots of these gorgeous, fragrant, very colourful flowers that deer don't eat, and that's why I'm excited to be able to tell you about Buddleia Chrysalis Blue. It's a really beautiful little plant that I hope you'll get a chance to grow somewhere in your garden. Oh, and another really neat thing just happened. As well as having pollinating insects and butterflies come to visit, also Buddleias are highly attractive to hummingbirds as well. In fact, as I was politely reminded just a few minutes ago, I looked up and there was a little hummingbird busy at work sipping the nectar. Beautiful to see those little wings flapping so quickly and enjoying the nectar from these lovely flowers. Really neat. This is David Wilson. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us, and it's very good for our environment too.